You're watching LMCC, your community TV.
The new Hennepin County Library in Excelsior opened September 13th, a day that's been a long time coming. And here to talk about that journey is Peggy Bauer. She's the senior librarian at the Excelsior Library. Peggy, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Great. I'm told that there's been a library here in Excelsior since 1922. Can you talk about the history of the library here?
Sure. In 1922, the Women's Club of Minnetonka approached Hennepin County Library, then head librarian Gracia Countryman, about opening a branch library in Excelsior. And so the two groups together created the Excelsior Branch Library in February 1922 in what was then the White House Hotel, located on the corner of Water and Lake Streets, where Haskell's now is. Before that, they did have a rental library at the Harness Shop in Excelsior, which was over by George and Water Streets. Then in 1928, the library was moved to one room on the third floor of the Masonic Temple building on Water Street. But climbing all those stairs didn't agree with everybody, and so the library was moved in 1932 to the corner of Water and 2nd Street. We had one room that in the offices that were rented by the Village of Excelsior at that time. That would be where Jake O'Connor's is now. And then sometime in the mid-40s, the library was moved to a room in the new village office building, which was over on 3rd and Water at 343 3rd Street. And that library was moved to the old school administration building in August 1965 because they tore down that old village hall and built the new 3-building complex. And the library opened in February 1966, paid for by all 5 of the South Lake cities. And then that was 343 3rd Street. And of course, we opened here on September 13th at 337 Water Street in our beautiful new building.
It is beautiful, it really is. And I know the trend in Hennepin County libraries is to have modernistic structures, but that didn't seem to be a good fit for our community. Can you talk about the blend of classic and contemporary trends that you see here?
Yes. Hennepin County worked very closely with a committee and also government officials from the South Lake cities to create a building that would fit the style and the scale of a building in historic downtown Excelsior. At the same time, Hennepin County, which is one of the cutting-edge libraries in the United States, wanted to offer all of the services that a modern library would have. And so the wonderful brick exterior is very historic and fits in with the colors and textures you would see in downtown Excelsior. But at the same time, there's this mix of historic and modern. We have some outdoor furniture where people can sit and read right off the bicycle trail that looks fairly contemporary, even though it's outside a historic building. And then in the interior of the building, we have historic touches like the beautiful murals that were painted by artist Greg Polishka, which really does show the history of the South Lake area and the city of Excelsior. At the same time, we have all the modern conveniences that people come to current library, our computers. We have lots of natural lighting so people can sit and read in the different areas. We have early literacy play and learning area for children, and one of the special features is a wonderful wooden boat that the children, which again ties to Lake Minnetonka and our community, and children can play that they're out sailing on Lake Minnetonka. Even the carpet has a splash, like it were a splash of water. And we have this beautiful wooden acoustical ceiling that is kind of transforming into trees. So it's really a wonderful mix of modern and historic.
Well, and I noticed that the siding and the landscaping and just the placement of the building, and there's several outdoor features that really do, like you say, tie this to the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we're very fortunate to be right next to the LRT Regional Trail, so it's a wonderful place for pedestrians and bicyclists to come to the library. We have outdoor bicycle parking. We have 2 entrances so that we're tied into the lively activities of Water Street, so people can enter from that end on Water Street, or if they park their cars behind the building, they can also enter from the door that's closer to the parking lot, and also where the exterior book drop is.
Well, it's just a beautiful, beautiful structure, and I hope all our viewers get a chance to stop by and see it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And now we're going to give you an opportunity to take a look at the time capsule that was installed in the old library, and they pulled it out and talked about it during the ribbon cutting for the building here. It's quite amazing to see the box itself, but also the letters and historical documents that the mayors of the surrounding communities left for today's mayor. So we'll take a look at that. Well, a lot has changed since that time capsule was put in place 50 years ago. And here to talk about some of those changes is Johanna Jeanette. She's the coordinating librarian for Hennepin County Libraries. And so Johanna, how is today's library changing to meet the needs of its patrons?
The library's focus has been and always will be on literacy and learning. So whenever we introduce a new library service, we make sure that it's focused on literacy and learning. It's no surprise now to see computers in libraries because computers are a way people access information, and also patrons need to gain computer skills to work and to successfully complete school. So we have computers and we have online resources in all of our libraries. We have other technology that we are introducing as well. We have computer classes at some of our locations, and we have ebooks that patrons can download to their own personal reading devices. Another thing that we've done is we've taken our services beyond the walls of the library. So some of the ways that we've done that is we have online resources available 24/7, so any of our patrons can access those resources from home. We partner with community organizations to get out into the community. For example, here at Excelsior, the library staff here has worked with the Chamber of Commerce in the past to co-sponsor events. And then finally, Hennepin County Library offers outreach services. That's how we reach our patrons who are unable to make it to the library. We have homebound services for patrons who are unable to leave their homes, and we also serve patrons who are in adult correctional facilities.
Interesting. So you could train me in how to download books so that I could just stay home all winter long and then just download one off the other off your website.
Yes.
Which means I don't really have to come to the library to meet my needs. But what makes the library experience so special?
Sure. What we're hearing at the national level through Pew Institute research studies is that Americans still value the library. They value the resources that we provide to their community. They value our gathering spaces, and they believe that libraries contribute to a healthy community. In 2013, Hennepin County Library created their own patron surveys. And what we heard from our patrons is that besides our library books and materials, they value the library because They view it as a connector to their community, so they meet community members here informally and formally in our meeting spaces, and they also meet new community members. They feel a pride of ownership with their library because the library is owned by the public. Although we have 41 libraries, most of our patrons still think of one library as their home library. And then finally, they value the library because we're a safe and welcoming space, and we are continually working to make sure our spaces are even more welcoming and friendly to patrons.
That's just wonderful. You know, when you did the planning for this space, your studies showed over and over again that people really do like to come here to check out a book. Well, how do you create and maintain a collection with a modest space like this?
Sure. There's a couple of things that we do. We have our staff monitors trends in publishing and also trends in communities. For example, in Excelsior, we know that gardening is a big hobby, so we always make sure that we have a lot of high-quality gardening books available for checkout.
I noticed that, yeah.
We also take feedback from patrons. We have an online form, so if you're not seeing materials that you would like in the library, you can fill out that form and we'll consider that for purchase. And then finally, we've got materials available at 41 libraries. So if it's not here today at your library, we can have it shuttled here from another library.
Okay, so if you had, say, 6 copies of the bestsellers, which I see you have lots of copies here, and then that's no longer the most popular book, how do you do to recycle that or cycle that out?
Yeah, the first step we take is we see if there's another library that needs that book. So books get damaged, sometimes books aren't returned, and we'll first identify another library to see if they could use that book. If that book is just on a downward trend and nobody's using it, we check that book out and we have our local friends organization. They're able to sell that book to raise funds to help support the library.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for explaining some of the ins and outs of the library, and we really appreciate your time today. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful library, and I know Excelsior and the surrounding communities are going to enjoy it for a long, long time.
Great, thank you.
Our next guest is co-author with his brother Conrad on a new book that's getting a lot of buzz about biking hero Major Taylor. Please welcome Terry Kerber. Terry, I'm so glad you could come by today.
Thank you, Beverly.
Yeah. Tell us, who was Major Taylor?
Well, Major Taylor was born in Indianapolis in 1878, and he would later go on to become the first African-American world champion in any sport. And during a time in history when bicycle track racing was arguably the world's most popular sport, he competed in a racially hostile environment and overcame incredible odds to become the 1899 world champion and the 1899 and 1900 American sprint champion. And when he competed in America, he had to cope with what he called the monster prejudice, which meant that he had great difficulties getting a hotel or a meal in America at a restaurant on the road where he traveled. And on many occasions, he faced threats from his actual competitors in America. And according to numerous race promoters back in those days, in America and Europe and Australia, when Taylor's name was on the racing card, it was common that 50 to 60,000 people would pay to watch him race. And the one thing that endeared Taylor to millions of fans all over the world was when he was about 18 years old, he became a devout Christian, and he made a promise to his mother that he would never race on Sundays. And he had to honor that promise right away. A year later, when he turned 19, he began receiving offers from Paris, France, to race in Europe for 3 months, and those offers were $15,000 for the 3-month period. And to put that in context, the average American in 1899 made between $500 and $600 a year. So in effect, he was being offered or turning down more money for 3 months of racing in Europe than the average American at that time would have made in a 30-year working career. And he would later go on to become the highest paid athlete in the world. In 1903 and 1904, it was estimated that he made about $40,000 to $50,000 each of those years. And by comparison, Babe Ruth, who every kid now knows, he did not sign a $20,000 contract until 1920, 17 years later, and that was only after Babe Ruth played in the big leagues for about 6 years. So Taylor was really respected by millions of people because of his incredible, often dominant talent, but he lived his life in two extremes. One where he was feted and praised in countries all over the world, and the other where he was disrespected and underappreciated in America.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He must have been a wonderful person. He must have been. So tell me what drew you to his story in the first place?
Well, we first came across Taylor's story while doing an internet search looking for an antique bicycle, and somehow we got diverted to a website that had a short article on Taylor's career. So as avid cyclists and lovers of history, we started to dig deeper, and what we uncovered astonished us to the point where we concluded that there needed to be a book written detailing not only Taylor's remarkable life, but also the men who helped him achieve worldwide fame. And in that process, we became almost obsessed by the hysteria that really surrounded cycling, all aspects of cycling during that period. I mean, barbers would speak about bicycles during haircuts, and doctors during exams, and preachers during sermons, and bicycles really influenced clothing fashions at that time, and politicians would run on platforms that would be friendly to wheelmen. And 1/3 of all patents in 1893 were bicycle related. So we wove all of this cycling hysteria and the story of the fascinating characters of that era into the story of Taylor's illustrious career. And the more research we did, the more we found ourselves unable to turn away until this very comprehensive book finally emerged.
Wow. Well, it must have been just a fever pitch of bicycle excitement. So, but to bring it back down to this wonderful person and his own story, is there something that you learned in your research that you think would help our audience, something from his wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. No question. Perseverance and forgiveness. Despite all the racially hostile, difficult circumstances that were the basis of Taylor's existence in America, at least, he applied the principles of his Christian faith by never letting his heart grow bitter towards the people who would persecute him the most. And the one example among many that come to mind is in 1904, he returned from Sydney, Australia, to San Francisco with his wife and his newborn baby girl named Sydney. She was born in Sydney, Australia, so the name Sydney. She was 2 months old at this time. But when they arrived in San Francisco in 1904, they were booted off of a bus. They were not allowed to enter any hotels, and they were denied service at many restaurants to the point where they just gave up and bought a ticket back to Worcester, Massachusetts, where they lived. And 3 years later, in 1907, when San Francisco had their big earthquake, Major Taylor was one of the largest private donors of relief funds to that same city that had denied him access to hotels and meals when he arrived there with his wife 3 years before that. And I think that is just one of many examples of what made him such a hero and such a legend and such a champion. And we call him the greatest legend America ever forgot.
No wonder he was loved by so many.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Terry, for joining us. And I did have a chance to look at Terry's book, and it's very, very well written. And so there's a copy of it here at the Excelsior Library, and you can also find it lots of other places, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
we appreciate your joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A great way to enjoy some beautiful fall weather is to get out and pick some produce yourself. And we found a really fun place to do that. It's Knapp's Raspberries, Pumpkins, and Orchard. And it's features wonderful, like hundreds of varieties of pumpkins. The owner, Gene Knapp, has hybridized some of them himself, and his specialty is those great big carving pumpkins with the whirly stem. It's just an amazing place, and they also have vegetables, they have raspberries, they have strawberries, and it's not just the kind of strawberries that you get in the grocery store. Remember the ones that you got when you were little, and they were so tasty? Well, these I think are like 1,000,000 times better than those. So you'll definitely want to get out there and get to know them and try some of their fun produce. And that is west of town. It's on Highway 55, just south of the highway in Greenfield. So go on out there and you'll have a great experience out there, I'm sure. So that's it for now. We hope you enjoyed our show. Wherever you go, whatever you do, we hope you have an awesome October.